Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and you have clicked on my comic book countdown slash comic book haul. So a countdown of the 8 new comic books I read this week, and then I'll flip the camera around and take a little dive into the comics themselves for people who want to look inside. As is becoming a usual thing, I'll put some timestamps, so if you want to skip that look inside the comics in case there's some spoilers or anything, you can skip ahead to the haul, which will be pretty big this week. I think, over here. You can see on the daybed, that stack of books there is my haul this week. So that's pretty big. What am I doing? Okay. In at number 8 this week for me was Starhenge. I hadn't been reading this. Then I picked up the first 2 issues at a Labor Day sale. So I figured what the heck, I'd get issue 3 too, which came out this past week. These comics are from August 7th, I want to say. It'll be in the description, the proper date of when they're from. But reading all 3 of these issues together was quite the hard work. And there's tons of interesting ideas in here, tons of interesting art, but ultimately it feels like a collage of notes looking for a story or hoping to become a story. And for some people that might be a really excellent experience, but somehow the way I experienced it this week anyway, and some of the art is really great and everything, but it just didn't coalesce for me, and so it was a chore to read. And then Shock Shop by Colin Bunn and various artists was kind of fun. I was kind of disappointed to see that it's not really an anthology of short stories, but a flip book of 2 11-page chapters of ongoing stories. So how long they go on for, I don't know. I feel like horror fiction in particular is really well suited to a good short story, and these so far seem okay. I'm waiting to see. I'm definitely getting the next issue, waiting to see if these stories do anything special. But even sort of so-so horror stories, sometimes I can be in the mood for that. So Shock Shop stays on the pull list, and we'll see. Once and Future is still on the pull list. I put this at number 6 because it's still on my pull list because it's nearing the end. Fantastic art, as always. Sometimes it feels like, especially the coloring, just keeps getting better. There were characters here. I wasn't sure who they were. I should know this stuff very well. I've been reading it every month for 29 months, but still confused. So I'm very tempted to reread the whole thing once it's all done and see if I can track it all together a little better. Dark Knights of Steel one-shot called Tales of Three Kingdoms. I think they're actually 3 tales of one kingdom. I think they all take place in the kingdom of the elves. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what my memory of it. They were all decent. They all had really good art. I wondered if any of it really mattered. It's definitely Dark Knights of Steel is one of my favorite current series right now. But these stories, I felt like they didn't add and perhaps in some ways subtracted to my understanding of where the story's going and who all these characters are. So it was definitely an interesting book. Definitely, if you're reading Dark Knights of Steel, you don't have to feel like you need to read that. So I put that at number 5 out of the 8. Number 4 out of 8 was The New Champion of Shazam. This is fun. I picked it up, and I picked up the previous issue, so I read the first 2 issues together, actually, but this is issue 2, which I put in at number 4 out of 8. I picked this up for the art of Evan Doc Shaner, as he used to be called, and I'm not sure if I'm so into where his art is going anymore. The story is solid, and I definitely have a soft spot for the Shazam family, the Marvel family. And this is, a brief period where Captain Marvel is missing. So Mary Marvel is the main Shazam for the moment. It's definitely interesting, but I think it could, with a little, if the art was a little more like Evan Shaner's art used to be. It's horrible to complain about an artist in terms of the past. But there you are. That's what I wanted. I wanted the older artwork by him. If it was more like that, and little twisting to the plot, maybe it might have been my number one book of the week. But anyway, it was where it was. These are not aesthetic judgments. These are my honest appraisal of how I felt, my subjective feelings, as I always say, about these comics. If I were a comic book reviewer trying to judge these for posterity, etc., I might have different judgments. A Town Called Terror, another book. I think this has been my number one book a number of times, sometimes for the whole month. Issue 6 was a satisfying ending to what looks like to be an arc. It looks like there will be more. But it kind of concluded most of what has been going on. However, I don't know. I think again it was on the art in a way that it was a big action issue. But this artist who's so great at moody horror is not so great at the physical action, I think. So that might have been part of it. I certainly enjoyed this a lot, but it didn't rise up above my top 2 because it was 3 out of 8. And number 2 out of 8 is Mind Management. And, I enjoyed the art. Oops, I'm supposed to show the art later. Anyway, I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the story. I was a little bit lost here and there, but I still enjoyed it. Twig, the finale of Twig. Although I think they do say at the back that Twig will return, so that makes me very happy. But it's a full story. I don't see, there's no, a new story would have to start all over again, right, with a new plot. But it was very satisfying, visually brilliant. The visuals and the story came together very well. I was surprised at how well this all wrapped up after 5 issues, because it felt like the story could have gone on a lot longer. But anyway, so I'm all in for Twig. I say if you like fantasy books with a kid kind of angle to them and beautiful illustration, then the Twig, when it comes out in hardback or paperback, will be a must-buy for those of you who didn't get it in single issues. Of course, I really only mean to tell you my thoughts, not what to do. But I'm letting you know that if you like that kind of kid fantasy, illustrated fiction, picture book, kind of has a picture book vibe in a way, but it works as sequential art. It's definitely sequential art. It's not just words with pictures illustrating them. But if that kind of thing appeals to you, I think Twig was a really excellent example of this kind of work. Okay, I will flip a different camera around and give you a look inside these books. Starhenge was definitely an interesting book, and I know some people really loved it. And it probably, on one hand, reading 3 issues in a row may have made the experience a little more frustrating, but on the other hand, it may have helped me kind of track the threads of the plot that one-man writer, artist, colorist, painter, sketcher, Liam Sharp on this book was up to. Maybe it helped me get the idea that basically we have 3 timelines, I think. One in the future, 2112, and yes, he does refer to the fact that matches the the Rush album 2112, right there. I know, right? Rush rules. A future where there are alien machines who want to exterminate or make humanity into their bitches, and a war goes on in the future, and the only way they can defeat the robots is to have magic. So someone goes into the past, I guess. This is where I already get kind of fuzzy, to create Stonehenge, which will send, I guess, because in the past on Earth is a time when magic was powerful, and it will send magic to the future, I guess. And meanwhile, all of this, or most of this, is narrated by this woman in our time who's dating this football player. I don't know why. And so she is telling us in this sort of handwritten looking font what's going to happen in the future. And then we are seeing scenes from the Arthurian period, I guess you would call it, of history, where Stonehenge is being created by someone who calls himself Merlin, but is actually, I guess, a time traveler. But there are lots of actual magical beings and such back in this time. So this is all what I figured out and put together roughly based on reading the 3 issues together. But much of it does not feel like sequential art. Much of it looks like, of course, this part does look like sequential art to a degree, like a diary kind of comic. But much of it looks like just some words and then an illustration that, if you use your imagination, you can kind of guess is illustrating something that may be going on in the words. It's kind of an interesting visual feat, and at times there's like paintings that look like Frank Frazetta paintings. The style is all over the place, and I guess that's where I started realizing this was like a collage or a bunch of like he has a folder full of notes and ideas and paintings that he's made for this story. But I do have to admit, by the time I got to the final issue, I was kind of curious what he's going to do with all this stuff that he's set up, if he knows what he's going to do at all. Let me see if I can find that Frank Frazetta-ish painting. There we go. Pure Frank Frazetta, I'd say there, or pure Frank Frazetta prestige. So instead of kind of acting out whatever's here, there's 2 paintings, and then there's dialogue and information that explains what happened. So anyway, as I thumb through it, I kind of find it more fun. It's kind of one of these things, like, in terms of ranking it with my enjoyment, like what was my enjoyment? It was kind of painful to read. But afterwards, I at least said, hey, I read something very different and something kind of interesting. I still don't know whether it will be good in the end. This could all be kind of like prologue before he really starts using, the power of telling a story panel by panel, rather than kind of just getting all his ideas onto the page in some way. And the ideas are kind of cool. So, yeah. So in a way, I battled with myself for a while where to put Shock Shop before or after Starhenge, and before or after Once and Future. But I kind of, in weighing out, the silly thing about making lists is trying to weigh all the different factors. But weighing the enjoyment I had while reading it, I think I enjoyed Shock Shop more than Starhenge, although Starhenge was certainly kind of a richer experience, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Shock Shop, basically each story is introduced by this character, Desmondia Nume Moreau. Desdemona Nume Moreau. I recognize the name Moreau, like the island of Dr. Moreau. I'm assuming those other names are references to horror stuff. So she introduces each story, and each one is kind of about a family situation with horror building up. They were all kind of interesting. There was something about them that lacked a second layer, and I guess I was just kind of disappointed. I thought they were going to be sort of like a short, sharp shock, a short, quick, in and out horror story. But each are 11 pages of the beginning of a longer horror story. This one had really cool art. Who was the artist? Danny Luckert. And the coloring was okay. It was done by Luckert. The other story, I think, was colored by Bill Crabtree. He's credited on the cover, but not on the interior. So one story was about kind of a haunted house story with family, and I'm trying to remember what this Danny Luckert story was. There's some kind of monster in the woods kind of thing. A little more than that. Both of them could turn out to be really good stories as we get more of them. So Once in Future, I think I couldn't help myself but enjoy the art. The color is spectacular. The Dan Mora art is very good. This is the penultimate issue, and I couldn't quite place this character. This is one of the versions of one of the knights from Camelot, but I couldn't remember which. And I'd forgotten. This turns out to be, I think that's the girlfriend of our main, or the person I thought of as our main character. What's his name? I can't recall it right at the moment. But anyway, I won't go too deep here because it does spoil some things. Let's see, I'll skip a few pages ahead. But it's such a brilliant looking book. I think I really will be tempted to reread it and try to figure out everything that Kieran Gillen, who loves to be confusing, was up to here. Dark Knights of Steel, as I said before, had 3 stories, only one of which I think was by Tom Taylor. And it showed us kind of this, for some reason, is a blonde Jimmy Olsen, the relationship between orphan Jimmy Olsen and Kal-El of the House of El, who are ruling this medieval world. It's just, I don't want to spoil too much for those who aren't reading the main series, but the characterization of these characters, particularly of the elves, and then how they start to seem later in the book, maybe that will all come together, but it just felt like I was being pulled in opposite directions by these stories in light of where the characters are in the current main book. I assume this is mostly to keep it must be popular to keep it on the market while the artists recoup. So this one was art and color by Caspar Wingard, and he did quite a good job. And then the next, so that was a full 20-page story. It could have been a filler issue all by itself. And the next one, called The Flock, had really nice artwork by, it's hard to read, Sean Izaakse. Is he a Nigerian? I don't know. For some reason, I almost feel like that's a Nigerian name. But beautiful, beautiful looking. Who did the color? This was really nicely colored. Color by Romulo Fajardo Jr. And it was written by someone I never heard of, Jay Kristoff. So I almost wonder if they're, letting some beginning writers or some writers not so familiar to us at DC try their hand at a few stories. So this is kind of a night on the town at Halloween time with Harley Quinn and Bruce Wayne and, well, he's not Clark Kent, Kal-El. And it's sort of an origin story of how Batman met his Robins. It's kind of funny of me to say, but it felt like there was anachronistic things going on here. And yeah, they're like that there's Halloween celebrations. I don't think they had Halloween in the medieval ages. They did have other events where they wore costumes and such. And that's not so bad. But in the first story, they have newspapers, which again is, when did newspapers actually start? The 1700s? 1600s, the earliest. So that doesn't fit the kind of medieval vibe. And there were a few other things that just seemed way more modern than that. But that's me nitpicking. And then probably the most interesting story to the overall continuity of Dark Knights of Steel was the character Bane shows up as kind of a noble fighter against the elves who trains up. Okay, I'm really spoiling a lot here, so maybe I won't go further, but he trains up Bruce Wayne. So that was an interesting twist. And then ultimately how Bruce Wayne pays him back is also an interesting twist there. And a little disturbing, and that story, maybe the disturbingness of it was more fitting with the tone of where Dark Knights of Steel is right now in the main series. So overall, as I often do, looking back through it, I'm enjoying it even more. So it was a pretty good book, and maybe I should have put it above the new champion of Shazam. But I was really craving some Marvel Families fun, and I managed to get a hold of these 2 issues. Issue 2 came out this past week with all the other comics. And I always try to grab books illustrated by Evan Doc Shaner. And at first I was liking the art, but the deeper I got into it, the more I felt like it was too perfect. It was too... it sounds weird to say, but it's too much like illustration and not enough like comics. And particularly because I look at Evan Doc Shaner as someone with kind of what I think of as a modern retro style, something that evokes the Silver Age, but still, is not exactly the way it was in the Silver Age. But now it's looking more like just, I don't know, very perfectly created digital compositions, if you will. And Shaner did his own coloring, and rather than go for brighter colors that kind of evoke the Silver Age a little bit more, he's muting himself down. And again, those muted colors just somehow just give it a tone of more sort of boring illustration. There's lots of cool stuff in here. This villain is really cool, and the bunny Hoppy, who's magically been given the power of speech, and the dialogue between Mary and Hoppy is a hell of a lot of fun. So it is a comic I enjoyed quite a bit. Here she has a fun fight with a giant alligator, but again, it kind of has that slick professional illustration look a little more than a fun comic book drawing look that I was hoping from Evan Shaner. So Shaner's evolved, and I have not. But still, I'm enjoying this. I'll definitely get the whole series. I think it's a mini-series of just 4 comics. And I did notice, not only is it on nicer paper than Marvel Comics, both the cover and the inside paper, it was also 22 pages as opposed to, I believe in Marvel Comics, you usually get 20 pages at this price point. Of course, the Liam Sharp books, the Starhenge, have nice cardstock covers and paper with no ripples and that reproduces the color, and no ads whatsoever. So, I mean, still the Image books far outshine both Marvel and DC. Speaking of Image, there was The Town Called Terror, this finale. And so, as I said, I liked it, but not as much as previous issues, and it was mostly because of this giant fight scene. And I don't think this artist felt comfortable doing fight scenes or was quite sure how to do them. So they're kind of just confusing. So I was not convinced when our hero wins the day. I guess that's a spoiler. He won his fight. And maybe if I re-looked at it more carefully, I'd see something in what we're shown that would show me why the hero deserved to win over his opponent. But it just seemed like there was a bunch of fighting and then the hero survived and the bad guy didn't. But it is setting up for more interesting stuff in the next arc, and I'm still really behind A Town Called Terror and looking forward to more from Steve Niles and Szymon Kudranski. I guess Sizimon, however you say his name, I guess he worked on Spawn for a while. So I don't know. That's an interesting detail to me. I'd like to go back and look at his Spawn, because you think in Spawn you need to be good at drawing action also. So I put it my number 2 comic, Mind Management, MGMT, I should say MGMT. And each issue is by a different artist, and there's a lot of cool art here by David Rubin, and he colored himself, and most of the time that was good. Occasionally there were pages, the dark pages, that just fell flat. But I liked his designs. I think this is... I need to go back, I guess, and read the entirety of the original Mind MGMT run. So I only read part of it. So I feel like I would understand a little more of what went on in this issue or maybe if I fully remembered what I did read too. This is a really cool scene with the characters keep changing shape and sexes in this battle that I think is all in the mind anyway. But here's an example of like the dark coloring where it's really worked to see what's going on in these panels. And so I think, when the previous issue was colored by professional colorist Bill Crabtree, everything worked. And I think, this artist has a lot of vision of what his color should be. He perhaps doesn't have as much experience of making sure that every page fully works in terms of color. That this made it to number 2 is kind of a sign that this was a so-so week for me, because there were a lot of frustrations with understanding fully everything that was going on. I suppose I give Kint the benefit of the doubt because there's so many cool touches. This guy named Chuck with his Charlie Brown outfit, if he was in the previous series, I've forgotten him, or maybe I didn't get that far. I love these bubblegum cartoons. I remember those from my youth. Palooka Joe, was that his name? So it's a cool comic. Maybe I do need to read all the other Mind Management, or maybe by the time we get to the final issue, I'll understand more. This time the script at the back is a script from a potential, quote, TV show that takes place between 2 panels from this issue. And I didn't get a lot from the little extra cartoon at the back this time, but maybe if I go back and read all of those. These are from the comic within the comic from issue 1. If I go back and read them all together, it might work for me more. I do like the visual layout of like we're looking at a photograph of comic book pages laid out on a black screen or something. You even see the staples and stuff. So also, like the Starhenge book, this is a really nice artifact with interesting paper, interesting covers. The paper has a texture and it's not glossy, so it's interesting. And at number 1, Twig. It's been a favorite of mine for quite a while now. I'm really glad that they seem to imply they'll be doing more. I hope that the artist, Kyle Stram, remains the same. Scotty Young did a good job, excuse me, a good job all the way through, but I particularly appreciate it by this final issue of providing Kyle Stram a not too complex script that was just right for him to show off his goods as a incredible illustrator and visual storyteller. So I do hope many of these characters recur, particularly this one, and in future issues. And Scotty, as the scripter, allowed a lot of the finale, a lot of the conclusion to be acted out visually too. So this is kind of the opposite of, even though they're both beautifully illustrated, the opposite of Starhenge, where it really is all about the sequential art, the use of beautiful illustrations and words combined to fully tell the story. It's not about having a story and throwing some pictures that are somehow related to the story up on the page. It's a fully formed comic book, and a wonderful kids book. Definitely is a kids book. I mean, there might be a little bit of darkness for the smallest of kids, but most kids, I think, will be delighted by this. And it definitely, hit the part of me that used to love reading the best picture books with my daughter when she was younger. So, yeah, I'm really glad I almost didn't film a video this week. As you can tell, it's pretty late. I'm really glad I took the opportunity to sit down and dive back into these books this way, because it actually made me appreciate everything I got this week more. So, okay, in keeping with long videos, I'm going to go back to my other camera and give you a haul with a lot of Conan. Okay, that's kind of the haul. No, that's not. Man, I'm doing badly today. I was going to say that's kind of the haul portion, like it's over. This is going to be the haul portion. Kind of a lot of stuff, but we'll see how long I take showing it to you. I had a very busy weekend and saw a lot of people. And so one of the people I hung out with was loading the Canon. And when we went to the comic book store Floating World, I picked up Santos Sisters #2. And I'm given to believe, science-free comics, I just noticed that. I'm given to believe that this may not be officially released yet to the rest of the market. I saw on Indie Comics and Reviews that it was listed to come out next week, but got it this past weekend. And I liked issue 1 a lot, and it's kind of irreverent, but also kind of gives you a nostalgic vibe for old kids comics, but it's definitely not a kids comic. So psyched for that. And they have a ton of these Steve Ditko comics at the store, at the Floating World store, and I just picked out 2 that looked interesting to me. Out of This World, which I think includes reprints from various magazines, plus some stuff that never quite made it into print, and stuff that was in very obscure places. This one even has some Steve Ditko pencils of a story that never got finished. Very intriguing. I'd like to at least see the plot description he was working with or something. The information in these, but from Robin Snyder, in these magazines is less than clear. And then I got this one, The Hero. What does it say? BB faces the destroyers of heroes. So they've got the Blue Beetle in here. I guess the copyright is... I'm confused about copyrights and there's the question too. I'm confused about copyrights over Charlton Books because I thought that DC owned these copyrights. But in any case, so it's got a mix of color and black and white. Interesting looking book. Maybe I'll be able to figure out the origins of what's in here and why Steve Ditko and Robin Snyder chose to reprint those. And then my pal, perhaps your pal, Ryan at Comic Book Apocalypse. That's not the proper name for it. Damn. I always forgot the name of his website, but it'll come back to me later. Anyway, Ryan was talking about how bad the recoloring in Swamp Thing's Absolute Editions was, and then I realized I only had the first 2, so I ordered the third one, although I agree with him, the recoloring is horrible. And there's even, it still has that swampy feel to the jacket, which is kind of cool. I don't even get why these covers look like this. Especially this cover. It seems like not that much effort was put into it. I don't know. Maybe other people will love that cover. This one's kind of cool just because of the way the colors work. But there's even a color comparison in the back of the book, which only convinces me more that this coloring was a mistake, this recoloring. So anyway, but I wanted to have it all in this giant size Absolute Edition, and so hopefully I will find time to read the whole thing. Also from In Stock Trades, I got this omnibus of Conan the King. And I own a percentage of these issues, but it just seemed nice to have them in oversized. And I have this feeling that at the period that Conan the King came out in the late 70s, early 80s, that a lot of the, that's when a lot of the print quality seemed to go down on newsstand comics. So I wanted it in a more readable edition. I know a lot of people object to the colors in these, and if I think about it too much, I guess it is a little on the bright side, but it's still kind of good. And this was supposed to come into my shop a few weeks ago, Fantastic Four Full Circle. I did ask my shop to order it. They did not remember to. And then they said it was out of stock or out of print already at the wholesale level. But I had no problem getting a hold of another copy from In Stock Trades. And I've seen a bunch of copies at Powell's Books. So maybe the bookstores have lots of copies, perhaps. It looks kind of cool. I've only just started beginning reading it. It's kind of a sequel to This Man, This Monster. The art is very interesting. It's different from what you would expect from Alex Ross. The writing, given that we're back in this Stan Lee, Jack Kirby world, it lands a little, dialogue-wise, it lands a little flat. But I've only read a little bit of it so far. It doesn't quite have the zing of the Stan Lee dialogue. Okay, and then I had lunch. Not lunch. I had, kind of lunch. We hung out at Mocha Express, John Stout and I, and afterward I went down to Comic Adventure, which is nearby Mocha Express, and looked over their back issues. And they have a very good back issue selection, and I very soon had picked up too many comic books and had to stop myself. But I managed to get this Werewolf by Night with the Mike Ploog cover, number 4. I'm hoping it has Mike Ploog on the inside. I have been reading some Werewolf by Night on the Marvel Unlimited digital app, so I'm not quite sure why that gave me the craving to have. I think I have 1 or 2 Werewolf by Night physical copies somewhere in my collection. Too much tape here. I want to look inside and see if there's Mike Ploog on the inside. So, do we have Ploog? Yes, we have Ploog. Not inked by himself. I think the best Ploog is when he inks himself, but still. There's only a little bit of classic Mike Ploog Marvel comics out there, and it's fun to own them. Quite the old comic book smell. Then I picked up this Creepy. This is all stuff now from Comic Adventure. This issue of Creepy, which says 9 classic tales drawn by the master of illustrated horror, Reed Crandall. I didn't know Reed Crandall worked for Warren. I suspect he did in the early days of Warren before they switched to mostly the Spanish artists and such. So this will probably be reprints from early Warren magazines. And then this was interesting. I haven't seen these around. Swords of Cerberus. This is volume 1. I'm not sure if this is the original cover. So this was totally a nostalgia buy. I already have the trade that would include all these issues. Volume 1. But back, like circa 1977, 78, just right as he was beginning to get some kind of sales, Dave Sim made up his own trade paperbacks, back before trade paperbacks really were a thing at all, collecting, I guess, 4 issues. I thought it was 5 issues. But anyway, which was kind of a revelation to me, because there was no way to, other than, the one comic book store I knew of, which was in New York City near my grandmother's, there was no way to get back issues. I mean, you could get back issues from dealers in comic book stores, or if you had a dealers in advertising comic books. But basically, there was no way to read previous issues. But suddenly, I could read previous issues of Cerebus. It was brilliant, really. I only could get this at the comic book store by my grandmother's. What was it called? Super Snipe. This looks in incredibly perfect condition. So I'm guessing it's not an original print. First print January 1981. Second print March 82. That's weird. I could swear I bought this in the 70s before I went off to college, but in 1981 I was in college. So, total weird memory. Could he have had a different version of a trade early on? I mean, I have this strong memory of his being the first time I saw a trade outside of Origins of Marvel Comics in the bookstores. So, anyway, that was fun to get. And then a graphic novel of The Punisher, which I knew nothing about, and I thought, hey, the graphic novel of The Punisher, that might be cool. But then what really made me decide when I saw Jorge Zaffino, I thought he was just a current artist. I didn't know he goes back to the 80s. I assume this is from the 80s. Is there a date? No date here. But anyway, I'm interested to... Well, let's take a look in here. Is there more than one Jorge Zaffino, or have I got the name wrong? I thought he had just done a very few American comics recently, and then was a European artist. Heap is evil. Okay. Looks very nice. Whichever Jorge Zaffino this is. Not like the more recent. Like he did an issue. Am I confusing him with someone else? I think he did an issue of Thor at one point recently. Is there? No, there are no bios of the creators. So, colorist Julie Mitchell. So I'll have to dig into that a little more. And then while I was looking at the old Marvel graphic novels, I got a Thor graphic novel, which is written, I guess, by Jim Shooter and Jim Owsley, although they're calling themselves James Shooter and James Owsley. A lot of glare here. And art by Paul Ryan, and then inked by Vinnie Coletta. So funny they would put Vinnie Coletta on this prestigious graphic novel. There's no data on the cover. But it was $5.95. And then I think I only have, now that I picked up 2 more issues of Eclipse magazine, which I remember liking a lot back in the early 80s when it came out. It just says January on the cover. At least I think it came out in the early 80s. Now I'm starting to doubt my memories. I had a number of issues in the early 80s, which I liked a lot. And now I'm trying to collect them all. And I think I only have 1 more to go, because that was issue 4. And this is issue 2. And I think I already had 3 and issues 5 through 8. I feel like I have issue 1 somewhere in my collection, but it's not in my CLZ. So I have to double check that. Inside, special color print by Michael Golden. Oh, and another graphic novel. I think I've looked at this many times in places that have these old Marvel graphic novels. And I recently bought a single issue. I hope it's not just reprinting material in here. Single issue published by a different publisher. The Futurians by Dave Cockrum, trying to recapture his popularity in creating lots of X-Men and creating or helping to create lots of Legion of Superheroes. But I don't think it ever really caught on. This one's $6.95. It's graphic novel number 9. Thor is graphic novel not numbered. That's weird. It probably has a number, but it's not listed. And then The Punisher is graphic novel number, oh, also not numbered. Okay, that's confusing. Doesn't say on the inside either. Oh well, I'll look into that more. Okay, now the rest is a bunch of Savage Sword of Conan. Here, I'm going to drink my teeny tiny thing of tea. 6 ounces? 6.4 fluid ounces. It's a green tea antioxidant boost. It tastes similar to the Trader Joe's matcha green tea that they have in cans, a little bit stronger. So I have Savage Sword of Conan 1 through 100, and then scattered other Savage Swords of Conan. And I originally told myself just stop at 100. But lately I've had the itch to have even more, especially when I realized the Marvel omnibuses actually shrink the pages of Savage Sword of Conan to fit them into the omnibus. So I want it makes it even more appealing when the price isn't too bad. So I picked up. Oh, I picked this up at another shop. This is what triggered it. I picked up just 2 Savage Swords of Conan, and one of them was this one, 132, which has a great cover. But I did not notice this this rip in the cover. It's a pretty serious one because a section of it is torn out. And then I did not notice it being in the bag. And this is the thing that I get fooled most often by buying comics in bags. I don't know if you can see here, there's a stain on the cover, but it's just barely visible. But when you flip through it, every page is kind of warped. And I'm like, oh man, this wouldn't even be worth $1 to me. I do not like water damage comics. So then when I was at Comics Adventure, they seemed to have a bunch of later run Savage Sword of Conan that were in nice shape. So I just started grabbing them, and before I knew it, I had 12 or 13 of them. Here is Savage Sword of Conan 108, kind of a cool cover. Is it signed by someone? Jusko. It's a Joe Jusko cover from 1984. It's amazing. I think I got my first Savage Sword of Conan in 74. Is that when it first came out? I got number 1 when I was 13 years old. It just kept going and going, unlike most other, any of the other magazine-sized comics. Here's 109. Interesting cover. Is there a signature on it? Nope. And 115 by Joe Jusko again. Pretty intense abs, but maybe not the right number of abs. You experts can tell me. Savage Sword of Conan 117. I'm not a big fan of that cover, actually. I don't know why. It looks a little too ridiculous. And I don't see a signature on it. Here is an Ernie Chan cover on Savage Swords 119 from or at least he painted it in 1985. There's some Ernie Chan covers that I really was impressed by. There's something about his use of color here that is strange to me. Oh, here's a good cover. Another Joe Jusko, 1985, signed. That's very good. And so that was issue 121. Here's 122. This cover's not signed. This might be Ernie Chan also. I like the color better on this one. But it has an Ernie Chan look to me. I feel bad for this girl with the head, a decapitated head held right by her body. And it looks, to me, I imagine that Chan was having trouble getting the neck right, so he made the collar of the cape go up really high to hide the neck. I don't know why I imagine those things. Another beautiful Jusko cover. Oh, this is the one This is the good copy of the one that I am rejecting. That's a really, really nice cover. I think I haven't appreciated Joe Jusko enough. This is also a Jusko for 1987. Conan, Savage Sword of Conan, still going strong in 1987. I looked it up when I was talking with John, and it goes all the way to number 235. And then they had, right afterwards, I think they had 10 issues of another black and white Conan magazine. Was it called The Savage Conan or Conan the Savage? Oh, and here's a beauty, although it looks derivative. Another Joe Jusko cover. It looks a lot, the pose and everything with the lightning looks a lot like a Frazetta cover from an old, might even been a John Jakes novel or something. But then the way the body is painted reminds me a lot of a Boris painting. So it's a weird marriage or a weird swipe from Boris and Frazetta together. At least that's how I see it. And this one has a signature that I can't quite make out, Dorian or something, from 1988, Conan number 155, Savage Sword of Conan number 155. It's kind of cool. It has kind of, it's like Conan in the Renaissance or something. It has kind of a Renaissance painting look to it in a way. Conan 160, also by Dorian. This one is really cool. It has a different kind of look. Wow, this is really impressive cover, I think. I don't even know how the cape is attached there, but it's not hiding his neck or his shoulders. I guess there's a little rope around his neck. But nice use of the colors. Nice one. And then this 182. It's 160. 182 is the latest one. I do not like this cover, but well, I like some aspects of this cover. So so all of those others, except for the one that was torn, I got at the comic shop called Comics Adventure, and this one and the one that was torn and water damaged, I got elsewhere. Okay, that's my daughter. I need to head out and go get her. So thanks for hanging with me on such a long video, and I'll talk to you all later.
And for number 4 cover. It's 17,500 and 22,000 advance out of 24. This is by Richard Corbin. It's 28,000 and 30,000. Go 32 now, 34. Is 32,000 asking for 34 now? Advance to 34,000. 34 is bid, go 36. And 36 now, 38. 38, go 40,000. It's 30,000. Let's go 55 here. 55 is bid, go 60. 60 now, 65. It's 60,000 asking for 65 now, bid 65,000. 62.5 on the cut. Advance out of 65,000. It's 62.5 asking for 65 to advance now. Go 65,000. We're on the cut here, Heritage Live. Don't let them cut you out. You know what an incredible opportunity this is. Advance now to 65,000 or fair warning. All right.